Have you ever wondered what a $300,000 SUV looks like? Well, wonder no longer and feast your eyes on this. This is a Bentley Bentayga extended wheelbase, and it's a $300,000 SUV. Well, okay, it's actually a bit more than $300K. This particular model, as equipped, $311,315 before sales tax. So realistically, you're looking at around $340,000. And this is not a fully loaded model. So if you're interested in things like custom hide colors, custom paint colors, embroidered headrests with your own family logo on them, you're talking even more money than this model here. So let's take a deep dive into the Bentayga and get a glimpse of how the other half lives. And by the other half, I mean the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, because they're the ones that can afford a car that literally cost more than the 13 acres that it is currently parked on. In the world of ultra-luxury SUVs, the closest competitor to this is of course going to be the Rolls Royce Cullinan. But the two vehicles have very different personalities and very different styles. I find the Bentley styling to be much more restrained than the more upright and perhaps more brash front end that we find in the Cullinan. The two manufacturers are of course no longer related. They had been tied together for quite some time, but Bentley is now owned by the Volkswagen Group. Rolls Royce is owned by BMW, and that has really allowed their styles to go in very different directions than they used to when they were both under the same roof. Now, when I say restrained, obviously there's not that much restraint going on with the styling. We have lots and lots of chrome up front, big grills here, and these bedazzled headlights that have millions of facets inside. It kind of looks like headlight by Swarovski crystal. This is the entire headlight unit right over here, high beam, low beam, full LEDs of course. And then over here on the side, we have the sort of bedazzled, almost pineapple shaped turn signal and daytime running lamp over there on that side. It's a very attractive look, but it also is definitely, look at me, again, a little bit more restrained though than in the Rolls Royce. On either side, we have the radar sensors there, ultrasonic sensors over here, and then right in the middle of that grille section down there at the bottom, we have the forward-looking infrared camera. As its name would indicate, the Bentayga extended wheelbase happens when you take a regular Bentayga and you add 7 inches of wheelbase. The distance between the wheels is now 125 inches, and from tip to tail, this measures 208.9. So it's solidly a full-size SUV in the United States. Most of that stretch, of course, goes right back here to the rear doors, which are incidentally powered. They don't power open, you do have to open them yourself, but you can close them at either the touch of a button or just by tapping on the door, then it will power its way closed. Let me know what you think of the style of the Bentayga. I think that this is more attractive than the Cullinan, but I'm not the biggest fan of this particular swoop right here. It does help give it more of a muscular appearance. It also helps hide the fact that we have really wide tires here, 285 width tires, and these are 22-inch wheels, so that should give you some idea of the scale of the Bentayga in this extended wheelbase version. It is a little bit sportier and more raked back here than we find in the Cullinan. That's obviously going to reduce cargo practicality, but if you can afford a $300,000 SUV, you probably have a Range Rover following with your luggage as well. Now, there are a ton of different wheel options and tire options, of course, available. We have the Bentley logo here, which is weighted so that way it stays upright at all times. Bentley is one of the few car companies in the world that still offers custom coach building services. Although that doesn't mean quite what it once used to, it does mean that the level of customization available in this vehicle is significantly higher than the average luxury car out there, say a BMW X7 for instance. There are 22 different paint colors available on the Bentayga that are blue, and if you don't like any of those blue colors, you can pay more and have it painted whatever color you want. Would you like your family logo embroidered on the seats? They can do that. Would you like it on the outside? They'd probably do that too. Would you like the top cut off and have a Bentley Bentayga convertible? If your pockets were deep enough, Bentley probably would find a way to make it happen. Style-wise, the rear end is a little bit more controversial than the front. We have these bejeweled LED tail lights. The turn signals are red in North America, not amber, and they are part of the hatch. So as you can see, when it opens, we get this big blank area here, and then we get repeater lights down here at the bottom of the bumper. This definitely has an Audi-esque vibe to it, especially the way that that is all shaped there. And that could make sense, of course, because the Bentayga is related to some of the larger Audis that are on sale, as well as the Lamborghini Urus. At least for the moment, the extended wheelbase Bentayga is available with only one engine. It's a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 related to the one in the Lamborghini Urus, but tuned to produce a little bit less power. Still pretty healthy though at 542 horses. If you want the W12, you have to get the shorter wheelbase Bentayga, and you probably want to act fast because the rumor mill says it's not long for this world. If you want the plug-in hybrid model, you might want to wait a little bit because rumor mill says that Bentley may be putting that in the Bentayga stretched model at some point in the near future. This model has a standard 8-speed automatic transmission and standard all-wheel drive, and according to Bentley, it will get you 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. But as we've seen from Bentley, that is a pretty cautious number, and in the real world, this is notably faster than that. Front seat comfort is of course fantastic. I mean, it would be weird if it wasn't, right? So instead of talking about that, let's talk about the seat controls. Because there sure are a lot of them. Over here we have the headrest button that moves the headrest up and down. Obviously seat back tilt, seat bottom cushion, extended thigh cushion right there. This is the 4-way lumbar. That is a seat massage button. And then the bolster adjustment is done with these 4 buttons here, which does seem a little on the excessive side. You can inflate and deflate the back bolsters separately from the seat bottom cushion bolsters. Seat heating and ventilation is done in the touchscreen, and adjusting the various different kinds of massage and their intensity, that's also done in the touchscreen. Hidden away in the front door, we have the seat memory buttons. These are for chauffeur 1 and chauffeur 2. Logically, if you're the owner of this Bentley with the nearly $12,000 optional rear seat package, you're sitting back here on the passenger side with your own 2-position memory and your own suite of complete controls for this rear seat, including the same adjustment that we found up there on the driver's seat. The inflatable bolsters, the 4-way lumbar support, the massage, the seat heating and ventilation, and an intelligent system that's automatically going to adapt that based on body moisture, etc. It really is a very comprehensive package. It's just a pity that in this particular Bentley, my power footrest doesn't seem to be powering down. As you'd expect in a Bentley, interior parts quality and fit and finish is absolutely fantastic in the rear. Lots and lots of stitchwork and lots of leather is happening in this interior. The entire door panels, all the way down to the floor, that's all leather. You can choose whether you want piping or just stitching. You can choose various different wood veneers or pick your own tree if you'd rather have that integrated into the cabin. You can also get natural stone trim. Really, the world's your oyster. Whatever you want on the doors, Bentley will do that. Whatever color you want the doors to be, they'll do that too. So you can choose, do you want these panels to be the same color? Do you want them different colors? Do you want them different than the front? They'd probably do that if you really asked and paid enough. Over here we have the optional wood trays. These are relatively small, more of a place to rest your, I don't know, your phone or something like that there. But check out down here, even that bottom part of the pillar, that is all stitched leather there. We have the optional name audio system. That is a very, very expensive option because the standard Bang & Olufsen system is not quite fancy enough for some folks. Now, checking out the design of the seats themselves, you can see we have the pillow top headrest right there. And this is a 5-seat vehicle, so we do technically have an extra shoulder belt for this seat and an extra buckle right down there. Interesting twist, we also have latch anchors. So if you have kids and you want a really big car that's child seat friendly, you know, you can definitely shop here. You can pull down this middle seat section and it doesn't become a full-on sort of powered console thing, but we do have cup holders with a slider, and then we do have a storage armrest with 2 USB-C charge ports right there. Then we get a ski pass-through right there that's big enough for, you know, a set of skis or 2. That's really probably all I would ever put through there. And then because logically this is really going to be used for just 2 people in the back, they actually dock the center shoulder belt right there in that partition between the cargo area and the rear seat area. So you do have to connect that if you want to put a 5th person in here. To give you an idea of how much room there is back here, I'm 6 feet tall and I can't really touch that seat back unless I tap my toes, but I wouldn't want to get some scuff prints on there. Again, the footrest is not popping down. I might be doing something wrong, or maybe this does need a little bit of service. There's the tray table. You can see it's quite far from me. We also have the rear seat entertainment system right there. And then here in the middle, we have a somewhat convoluted touchscreen control. You can use this to control things like the seat heating and seat ventilation, or your media controls, the rear blinds, things like that. You can open or close the sunroof blind. We then have very similar pull controls for the rear air vents. These are the organ stops that Bentley's been known for a while. And then we have the buttons to power close the rear doors. If you want to pay even more, rather than having these chromed organ stops for the climate controls, you could actually opt for 18-karat gold plated ones. Then down here at the bottom, we have a Qi wireless charging mat for your smartphone. The doors aren't the only things covered in leather, so is the entire ceiling, including both sun visors for the driver and front passenger, so a fixed one and a movable one over there, and all around that enormous panoramic moonroof that goes to just about the rear passengers' heads. The driver and front passenger get height adjustable shoulder belts and butterfly style headrests rather than the pillows that you find in the rear. From this angle, you can also see the auxiliary inputs on that rear seat entertainment system. Logically, there are lots and lots of different upholstery options available in here. We have perforated seat backs and seat bottom cushions because these seats are both heated and ventilated. And speaking of perforations, we have some over here on the door that have an entirely different purpose. These are actually part of the ambient lighting system. So you can configure the ambient lighting and you can get a different color shining through those little perforations versus the other ambient lighting washing the interior. There is definitely more of that wood trim up here, absolutely acres. I have to say, this is the kind of wood trim we used to find in a wide variety of luxury vehicles, especially English luxury vehicles like Jaguar, etc. But really, Bentley and Rolls Royce are the only ones left with this kind and this quantity of highly lacquered wood. Again, if you don't want highly lacquered wood, you can get any wood you want, but I do think this has a classic luxury vibe to it that I really like. It's also worth noting that the dashboard is not actually charcoal. This is sort of a dark moss green, so it helps dress things up and give it more customization and more of a personality, I would say. We have a pretty decently sized glove compartment in here, and this has the fantastic price tag on this model, $311,315. The destination charge alone is $3,150. In the middle of the dashboard, we find even more wood trim, air vents that look a lot like the ones in the rear with that analog clock in there. And again, you can get those pulls in gold if you want. Down below that, we have a touchscreen that's running basically a modified version of Audi's software. I think that's actually an asset because this feels more modern than the software that we find in Rolls Royce models, although it is a little bit more convoluted than I would like as far as its operation. Also kind of an interesting twist, we have a little tiny control wheel. So if you'd rather use the control wheel than getting fingerprints on your screen, you can do that. We have a power and volume knob there, controls for the 4-zone automatic climate control down here. Lots and lots of buttons are happening in this interior. One of the areas where the system is a little bit complicated is in the seat heating and seat ventilation. You can't just press these buttons again to get the system to turn on. I press it, then I go in here to press the option, or I just leave it in auto and let the car do its thing. I really just wish that a second press the button would turn the system on or off because it's just a kind of an odd extra step. Below that button bank, we find a Qi wireless charger and a joystick style shifter. There's a Bentley logo on the top. That's the unlock button, so I push that, pull back for drive, push all the way forward for reverse. Park is that button right there on the back of that shifter. Over here we have two big cup holders, various other system controls like the parking sensors, automated parking, parking brake, etc. Down here we have the drive mode selector knob essentially and the engine start stop button. So we rotate that around to comfort, rotate that further for the custom drive mode, and then we have hill descent control because of course it's an SUV. Behind those controls, we find a split sliding armrest for the driver and front passenger, small storage cubby right there. Then if I lift it out of the way, we have a larger cubby where we also find some USB ports for smartphone integration. In case you're wondering, since this vehicle has adaptive air suspension, you can adjust the ride height in the infotainment system, and then over here you can also edit the custom drive mode that's available. They call the default drive mode Bentley rather than normal, of course. As you'd expect, on the driver's side, we have a full color heads-up display, lots and lots of stitching going on there on the dashboard, and then a full LCD instrument cluster. But this LCD cluster is not as configurable as I thought it would be. For instance, we don't have a complete full-screen map view, and we don't have satellite imagery there, but it is relatively customizable, and you can choose what you want over here on this single-gauge display, whether you want that to be the speedometer or the tachometer. Moving out from there, we find, of course, the Bentley logo on the middle of that steering wheel there. You can choose whether you want this wheel to be all one color, whether you want the inside and outside to be different colors, perforated leather. Again, the world is your oyster here. On the back of that, we have shift paddles. Over here, we have the controls for that multifunction LCD cluster. You can change its various modes there. And then over here on this side, we have controls for both the infotainment system volume control there, as well as a heated steering wheel button, because the cruise control controls, those are on a stalk right down there on the back of the wheel, as is the powered tilt telescopic mechanism. That's back there as well. Vehicles like the Bentayga are all about driving comfort. So let's talk about the ride quality first. Even out on a poorly paved road surface like this gravel road, the Bentayga is very, very comfortable. It just wafts over most of these imperfections, especially when in comfort mode. It is a little bit firmer in the Bentley mode. and even firmer still in the sport mode, but this is never going to be some sort of rock-hard, firm kind of sports vehicle. It's just not that kind of car. And to be honest, comfort mode suits the personality of the Bentayga the most in my opinion. This weighs about 5,500 pounds, it is relatively heavy, and the steering is relatively slow as well. Obviously things are going to firm up in sport mode, and it does have 4-corner steering in this extended wheelbase model, which helps it turn really tightly around corners, but nothing is really going to hide the size and the weight of the vehicle. And that is just fine by me, because it would be weird if something this big and this expensive and this luxurious didn't feel big and expensive and luxurious out on the road. So it absolutely fits the personality to a T. As does the acceleration. Merging into traffic is absolutely no problem because this enormous marshmallow will go 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. That is significantly faster than the quoted Bentley time of 4.5 seconds. And the way this delivers the power is very impressive as well. If I come to a stop and then romp on the throttle, power builds right around 2,000 RPM. It starts off gradually and then just absolutely goes for it. The exhaust also gives you much more of a ferocious growl. If you're driving this normally, if you just start it in your driveway, you get that solid V8 burble, but it is very civilized, very quiet. Until you floor it. Then we get cracks and burbles back there in the distance, but everything is very, very hushed. 60 to 0 stopping distance, also pretty impressive thanks to the 285 width tires that we find on this model. It took just 114 feet for this to go from 60 back to 0. That probably could be a little bit shorter if it had even grippier tires on it. These are P0 tires. It could also be a little shorter if they put wider tires on it, and I am a little bit surprised that this didn't go just a little bit wider. It's worth noting that Bentley theoretically is more of a performance-oriented super luxury brand than, say, Rolls Royce with their models, but brake fade is a real concern with this model. I didn't get excessive brake fade because I wasn't really trying to romp on it super hard and warp any rotors or anything, but after a few repeated stops, that stopping distance did start dragging out to about 125 and then 130 feet on the 6th 60 to 0 stop. So certainly keep that in mind. It's a big vehicle, it's a heavy vehicle. This is not an alternative to a Nissan GTR or something like that. It may seem weird to talk about the handling ability of a Bentley at the same time as a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, but oddly enough, that's probably a more realistic cross shop than something like a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Someone that's shopping for one of these probably either already has a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, or they're going to buy one the week after they buy a Bentley. So keep that in mind as well for the rest of us out there that are just amazed at how expensive and how much fun this vehicle can be. And that's probably the biggest thing about the Bentley out on the road, is that this is big, it's luxurious, it's softly sprung, but all of the tech that Bentley has been able to jam under the hood and under the body really make this a 21st century ultra luxury vehicle. It's not wallowy. Thanks to the 48-volt adaptive air suspension, if I waggle the steering wheel, the body is very, very flat. It has the latest anti-roll technology, essentially borrowed from Audi and then tweaked to work in the Bentley. So even if I'm in the most comfortable mode here, and again, you're going around the corners, the body is very flat, very, very level. And that's very different than ultra luxury cars of the past, which had excessive body roll, excessive tip and dive, and they weren't that much fun to drive necessarily. This is ultra luxurious, it's compliant when you want it, and then when you want to go a little bit faster, it is surprisingly fun. Just not the same level of fun as you'd find in a Bentley coupe. If you're looking for an objectively sporty Bentley, you're probably not shopping for a Bentayga, let alone the extended wheelbase Bentayga. Instead, this is more rationally the modern limo in a way, because a regular sedan Bentley isn't going to have a roofline quite as high in the back, and you don't have as much room for features like the adaptive air suspension system, all the extra sound deadening that we find in here. This is a very, very quiet cabin, just 68.5 decibels at 50 miles an hour. So this is certainly one of the quietest vehicles that we have ever tested. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, this is the quietest vehicle that we have ever tested. So the relative handling ability makes an awful lot of sense. What else are you going to compare this kind of vehicle to? That is a tricky one, of course, because if the world is your oyster cost-wise, there are a decent number of high-performing vehicles out there in this same price range that will of course handle better. After a week of driving this Bentayga, I have to admit the fuel economy has surprised me. I had expected it to be single digits, and instead it's been hovering around 13 miles per gallon or so. That's still not fantastic, but it is definitely better than I had assumed it would be. The kind of person that's shopping for this probably isn't too concerned about the cost of operations, but they may be concerned about the image of greenhouse gas emissions, which is why we're very likely to see the next generation of Bentley plug-in hybrid system at some point in the extended wheelbase version. You can get plug-in hybrids elsewhere in the Bentley lineup, but at this point in time, you can't get it in this specific model. And I have to admit, I'm a little bit surprised by that because the extended wheelbase format probably gives them actually a little bit more room to stuff some batteries back there, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that soon. Bottom line for the Bentayga, this is just as impressive as you thought it would be. It's just as excessive, just as overboard as you thought it would be as well. It is definitely comfortable. It is wicked fast. It handles surprisingly well for something that's this big, but the big thing about the Bentayga is how it makes you feel when you're getting massaged and you're very comfortable, but you can still go 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds. And of course, all the looks that the Bentayga garners as you drive around. That is the most interesting thing. I've driven big sports cars, I've driven NSXs, things like that, 911s. None of them get the looks that you get in a Rolls Royce or a Bentley driving down the road. And logically, that is an entire reason in itself to spend the extra on something like this instead of perhaps a Mercedes Maybach. You know, you could get in the same sort of general price range as a base Bentayga, you could get a Maybach GLS, but it's not going to have the same kind of head-turning ability that something like this will. So how did this Bentley get to $311,000? Well, let's roll through the options on this model. It started at $263,500. We then have the $11,195 rear seat option package. The audio system in this model, over $9,000. There's an extended range option. We have the Bentley entertainment system in the back, the 22-inch wheels. Diamond illumination, that is the see-through, light-through diamonds on the doors. That particular option is over $2,400. The metal overlays to the veneers on the dashboard, that's extra as well. The rear privacy glass, the LED welcome lights, the self-leveling wheel badges, etc. All of that together, plus the destination charge of over $3,000, is how you get to that whopping $311,000 on the Bentley Bentayga extended wheelbase. But that's right in keeping with all of the ultra-luxury competition. Which brings me right to the question that absolutely zero Bentley shoppers ever ask. Is it worth it? I get asked that so frequently when it comes to luxury vehicles on the top end of the regular luxury segment and ultra-luxury vehicles like this Bentley or a Rolls Royce. And the honest answer is, if you have the kind of money that Bentley shoppers have, you're not asking, is the Bentley worth it? You're simply asking, do I like the Bentley logo? Do I like the ride quality? Do I like the styling of the vehicle? What does that say about me? And do I like it more than I like the Rolls Royce? If I were to project and pretend, after having lived with this vehicle for about a week, that I was in a purchase category where I might be considering a Bentley, I would say I would pick the Bentley over the Rolls Royce. I think that the Rolls Royce look is a bit too ostentatious, a bit too in your face. And this is definitely, you know, more discreet, I guess you might say. A little bit more, perhaps, old money, a little bit more restrained. But value doesn't really come into the equation of this vehicle like it does that Lexus lurking in the back. If you're shopping for a Lexus, even an LS hybrid, the fully loaded model that's $100,000, you're not in the same category as a Bentley that's not only $300,000, but has to be custom ordered, has this many kind of options on it, and then the maintenance and repair costs and insurance and upkeep, etc., is going to be other level compared to anything in the mainstream luxury category. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comments section below, and thanks for taking a time with me in this Bentley, and of course thanks to Bentley for sending it along. This is the kind of vehicle that I generally don't request. We only ended up getting this Bentley because Bentley reached out and said, hey, do you want to drive it for a week? And you know, who was I to say no? So thanks to all of you for watching, subscribing, hitting that membership button, etc., because logically you're the reason I was able to play with this Bentley for a weekend. Have you all join me in that adventure. And if anybody ever gets their hands on, I don't know, a trust fund, then put a Bentley on your shopping list. Let me know down there. See all of you later.